Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Tuesday, May 18th, 2021, and today we're going to be talking about Representative Val Demings from Florida's 10th Congressional District, who is now poised to run for Senate against Senator Marco Rubio in the upcoming 2022 Florida Senate election. Now, this is something that is going to change the outcome of the race, or not the overall outcome. It probably won't have a tremendous impact on whether or not the state was going to go red or blue, because a lot of that does actually is dependent on whether or not the Democrats can actually make inroads and make up significant losses that they had amongst the GOP in the 2020 election and also the 2018 election. Val Demings will be on the same ballot as Ron DeSantis, meaning that the 2022 midterms will be that determining factor as to whether or not Val Demings is carried across the finish line by potentially a popular Biden presidency or lags behind due to an unpopular Biden presidency. The midterm elections are going to be very interesting, and this just adds into it. Val Demings saying essentially that she is going to be running for Senate. This was a consideration as to whether or not she was going to run for Senate or for governor. Now, while the governor option may originally have seemed more of an opportunity, given that Ron DeSantis had only won by 0.4% in the 2018 election, the Senate election seemed to be no more out of reach then. But now, based off Ron DeSantis' popularity and the fact Ron DeSantis is defeating his opponents consistently by around 10, 11 points, Val Demings might turn to the Senate position, which would have a much more tremendous and beneficial impact for Democrats, at least on the national level. So, Val Demings, who is she? Why is she a name that is recognizable for some of the people that are watching this video? And why is she getting her own Politico article? Many people announce that they're running for Senate all the time. So why is she particularly important? Well, if you remember back when Joe Biden was deciding who his vice presidential nominee was going to be, Val Demings was actually up there. You know, many people on the inside of the Biden campaign said that it really came down to Susan Rice, Val Demings, and Kamala Harris. And of course, we all know that the vice president of the United States now is Kamala Harris, and Val Demings was not chosen as the vice presidential nominee. But this was, the fact that she was considered is really astounding. I think that is a very good thing for her. I think that really is a testament to how strong at least the Biden campaign felt she was, and why Democrats feel she will be an individually strong candidate in this state. She also will break away from that standard image about the idea of the, rather than the Black Lives Matter movement being anti-police, I think that she would be able to change the way that it's viewed amongst the eyes of many members of the right wing as the nominee. I think that Val Demings is someone who offers that experience, previously serving as a police chief. And I think that's something that is a really major plus for Val Demings, at least in the state of Florida, because we do know that she is she's going to be running in a moderately conservative state. I don't think you can really get around that. Florida is still a state that, while the Democrats have won in the past, does seem to lean towards the right. In addition, when you're looking at some of those primaries, one thing that I do want to point out as well is the fact that she is also going to be trying to win over independents and some of those people that actually switched over from voting for Democrats in the past. You know, it's no coincidence that in the same election that the entire Rust Belt turned away from the Democrats, that Florida did as well. There were plenty of voters who voted for Obama that also voted for Donald Trump. And the same thing happened in 2020. And many people, continued to vote for President Trump and actually crossed over from the Clinton to Trump's side. So Florida is going to be a state where she's going to be working at a disadvantage. She's not going to be able to run in this state with the advantage. This announcement does not change the way I view the race dramatically, but it does add to the discussion because this is a major announcement. She's a representative, someone who could have almost been the vice president of the United States, and now she is taking on Marco Rubio, but she still is working, climbing up an uphill battle. I mean, she is working in a state where Donald Trump won by 3% back in 2020, won by 1 point back in 2016, where the Democrats actually lost here in 2018 in the governorship and in the Senate election. That was a very poor showing for the Democrats in Florida, given the national environment. And if you're looking at Marco Rubio's seat, the last time that it was up for election was 2016, and Marco Rubio won by, get this, 7.7%. You're talking about nearly an 8-point margin of victory for Marco Rubio. What a large amount, right? That is a very good number for Rubio, and something that he's going to look at and say, this is beneficial for me, this is beneficial for the GOP, and this is why Val Demings likely won't win this race. But if we do a little bit of history, when did Marco Rubio get elected? Well, he was first elected back in 2010. It's quite interesting to see what happened here. Charlie Crist was the independent person on the ballot that got a lot of the vote, Kendrick Meek, received 20% of the vote as a Democrat. Here's the thing. Charlie Crist ran as a Republican first. He was the front runner. He was endorsed by many people. He was loved by many people in this race. He also, was someone who had received a lot of support in his previous elections as a Republican. So looking at the Senate election, rather than go for the governorship again, he instead turned towards the Senate, but ended up changing political party affiliation due to a lot of backlash from the inside of the GOP. Marco Rubio instead took his place as the Republican nominee, and Charlie Crist still ran as an independent. Well, the problem was there was a Democrat on the ballot. Look at how much support Charlie Crist got, and look how much support the Democrat got. Now, this is not the fault of the Democratic Party. Charlie Crist had switched over political parties later on. So, the Democrats had every intention of running their own candidate actually against Charlie Crist. So, looking at the race, he actually was the spoiler. Even though he got the second most amount of votes, he was the spoiler, not the Democrats. Because if you look at the amount of vote that Charlie Crist got, he got 29.7%. The Democrats got 20.2%. Added together, 49.9%. Marco Rubio only got 48.9%. So if there was this coalition behind Kendrick Meek or behind Charlie Crist, Marco Rubio would not be the incumbent senator that we are working with today. But, of course, he is. Because it was a three-way race, he won by a landslide, won by 20 points, a race that was called very early on in the evening because Charlie Crist refused to drop out and endorse Kendrick Meek, and the same thing for the Democrats. I will say that, this is a reason why Rubio is in office due to the fact that Charlie Crist remained in this race. The fact that he ran as an independent, he peeled away voters, most of them, I will say possibly all of them, from the Democratic Party. So now Val Demings is in this position where she is going to be vying for an election where Rubio was first elected by a 20-point margin of victory, then re-elected by an 8-point margin of victory. How does she have a pathway to victory, and what does this do for Senate control? Well, first things first, if Val Demings was to actually win this Senate race, it would completely change our entire Senate map. Because if Florida was going blue, I can tell you now, plenty of other states would go blue as well. Pennsylvania would have flipped. Georgia, Arizona would have stayed the same way, potentially North Carolina and Wisconsin flipping as well. Florida will be one of the more troubling states, but Val Demings, out of anyone, I think would be the best candidate for this race. But that doesn't necessarily mean I think she is going to absolutely win. Even though she was on that short list, she does have to face the reality that Rubio still has the advantage. Looking at the numbers, he has a 47% positivity rating amongst the Florida voters. 42% say they don't approve of his job. A 5-point positive isn't something that you would deem super good or something that's worth noting if it was in a safe state or if it was in a likely state. But Florida is a very big swing state. People are very divided in this state. And the fact that he is at +5 statewide is a testament to his ability to win over these voters. In addition, on the same ballot, he's winning by +6. It's quite interesting to see that he's winning by more than the amount of people that approve of him, which means that there are some voters here who are saying, I might not necessarily approve of Marco Rubio, but I would vote for him in a matchup between X, Y, and Z against a Democrat, against someone else, an independent maybe like Charlie Crist, whatever it might be. He is being backed 46-40. And there's some other data that we actually see. Also, looking at the numbers, Joe Biden is unpopular in the state. Only 47% of Florida voters say they approve of Joe Biden. 49% say they don't. So Rubio is actually running ahead of Joe Biden, and there are less people that disapprove of Rubio than they do of Biden. So that's a good number for Marco Rubio. That's a good sign for his re-election bid. Because if he's outpacing President Biden, that means that Biden at this point, being disapproved of despite being up 12 points nationally speaking, will need to go above that 12 points just to shift the electorate in Florida to approve of him. And enough so that these voters like Biden so much they are not willing to vote for a Republican like Marco Rubio, which is very extreme to see. But I do think that Val Demings does offer a number of pluses, but I don't think it's enough. We can actually take a look at her election results in the 2020 election. Let's take a look at Orlando, Florida, just to see her House district. Now, she was first elected or first inaugurated back in, I believe, 2017 was when she was inaugurated. If you're looking at the 10th district, it should be right around here. I think I might have jumped over it. 10th district, right here. Val Demings won by a pretty considerable amount. Now, this was a district that was forced to redistrict following the 2010 census, so around middle early to middle way of the 2010 to 2020 election, 10-year, decade-long election seasons, Val Demings was put in an opportunity where she was able to win her district, where she was able to win in the 10th district and has held on ever since. And she's still in office. She's still a representative in the United States Congress. And that's why she was considered to be on the short list. I mean, she was someone who had just entered into Congress around the same time as Vice President Kamala Harris. So the issue of experience wasn't necessarily different than it was for her. In addition, she offered some type of electoral advantage just being from the state of Florida. And it seems very clear that if Biden thought she was able to help him win Florida or could have helped him win Florida, that maybe, she could actually win it for Democrats in 2022. But it all comes down to the year. But I think that, had Val Demings not announced that she was running, we probably wouldn't see that many super notable candidates that are announcing. The announcements pending, you have Val Demings, you have Alan Grayson, and you have Stephanie Murphy. Now, Stephanie Murphy, I think, is one of the more recognizable names, but Val Demings is going to take away a pretty considerable amount of support. I think she's going to be a very recognizable name, a name that could potentially get a lot of top Democratic officials. I think Stephanie Murphy could have been able to run statewide with some type of recognition, but I think Val Demings has more of it, at least on a national stage. I think she will receive much more media attention and consequently much more money and exposure to the American public. And if you're looking at the potential list here, we have Nikki Fried, who looks like she's going to be running for governor, so she probably won't be running for Senate. You have Gwen Graham, who might be running for governor potentially, or might run for Senate. You have Demi Murkisel-Powell, who was a former representative, who might run for Senate or might run for governor. And if you're looking at the denied list, well, you can sort of guess this. Charlie Crist isn't going to be running because he's actually running for governor. This same Republican is now running for governor as a Democrat. He actually was the Democratic nominee for governor back in 2014 and lost to Rick Scott by 1 point and is now going for a rematch, but not against Rick Scott, instead against Ron DeSantis. Rick Scott is actually now a senator in this state. So there's a lot of transitioning within the state of Florida amongst very similar political officials, and Marco Rubio is one of them. He's a recognizable name. He won by a lot in 2016 despite Donald Trump winning the state by just 1.2%. Looking at the margin, Marco Rubio significantly outperformed Donald Trump, and Marco Rubio didn't even win the state in the primary. That's the thing. It's not as if these Republican voters didn't like Trump. They liked Rubio more than Trump. It was actually just the fact that more independents and potentially some Democrats liked Rubio better than they did Trump and voted for Rubio by a pretty considerable amount. 7.7% is a very good number for Florida. You're talking about one of the larger margins of victories in this state in quite some time now. I mean, that's a very large margin when you're talking about a head-on-head race between a Democrat and a Republican. Obviously, that 20-point margin seems a lot better, but if it was obviously just a Democrat versus a Republican, the margin might have been different, and the Democrat might have actually won that Senate race. But right now, Florida has 2 Republican senators, which means that the Democrats need to try to field everyone and everyone. I think that every race needs to be contended. I think that you're going to see a number of top Democrats try to run for top positions, even if they might not actually win. I mean, you have Joe Cunningham running for governor in the state of South Carolina, even though he obviously isn't going to win it. Val Demings probably isn't a quote-unquote sacrificial lamb, but she is going in with the understanding, I think, that she won't be able to win this Senate race, at least as it stands currently. Marco Rubio is popular. Marco Rubio won by a lot previously. He won by even more 6 years prior, and 2022 just might not be that year for the Democratic Party. There's a lot that needs to be discussed, but for Val Demings to announce this Senate bid, I think she serves as the most powerful Democrat that's running and the most impactful and possibly the most electable, but that doesn't mean Democrats are in the advantage. I think this reminds me a lot of the video I discussed today in the Virginia governor's race that, hey, it was a good move that Glenn Youngkin was endorsed by Amanda Chase, that there was this, coalition of Republicans that were backing Glenn Youngkin instead of Amanda Chase, or instead of prompting her to run as an independent. But at the end of the day, you're still starting out as at a disadvantage. And while Florida might not necessarily be as partisan as Virginia, it sure seems like that. And looking at the election history in the state, the last notable statewide election win, and I'm not talking about Nikki Fried here, the last notable statewide election win was Bill Nelson and Barack Obama in 2012. They dropped the ball in 2018, they dropped the ball in 2016, they dropped the ball in 2014, and then again in 2020. There's not much hope for Democrats in 2022. Val Demings could try to break that streak. She could try to defy all expectations, but at the end of the day, Val Demings is still a Democrat running in Florida and will be facing an uphill battle against a popular senator. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch and then a playlist for my 2022 Senate election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.